to get kids to communicate with each other, we have to get off the phone, we have to put it down, and we need people to just go face to face and have conversations, because when people speak from their heart and listen to each other, that is another step towards stopping the violence.
It's important that we understand how to communicate with each other and be a little bit more open with our emotions.
They have to stop exercising their thumbs and begin looking at each other and talking to each other about various subjects, likes, dislikes.
If we have a really important message, we just text it. We don't really have one-to-one talks, which really kind of disconnects us from each other and our emotions.
Everybody needs to be open. So once that they realize that people are open and they will listen to what they have to say, and once people start listening to what others have to say, they will be able to talk.
They have all this ability to use technology and they can communicate at any given time, but what they need to learn is how to communicate what's most important to them, how to connect on deeper levels.
Information overload. There is way too much information right now for our younger generation because of cell phones, social media, internet. Yes, they all have great perks, but there's also negative consequences, and there's just too much information for these brains and able to process their day-to-day living without just being a kid and getting on your bike and building a fort and doing things in the natural order like we did growing up. So there's just too much information.
There is no real tone to text, so things get complicated pretty often.
We live in a world of social media. We live in a world of, I think people have lost the sense of one-on-one communication. We can't, I talk to kids every single day and they can't even look me in the eye because they are not able to socialize in that way anymore. So we need to come up with a way where social media and conversing ideas, because they can hide behind computers and it's okay for them to be mean. And we need to let them know that when you're hiding behind a computer, you're hurting people way more than you think you are. And I see that every single day.
Due to technology and due to social media, that children do not have a sense of how to communicate with one another, parents, adults, teachers, and I think that's a problem that we have today.
Kids this day do not communicate at all. I think the social media, text messaging has taken over the world. You know, they're very good at texting and responding quickly, but when they have to interact face to face, it's very difficult for them to become uneasy. And I think we need to get away from the social media, get away from the phones, and just get back to the old days, kind of where we can just go call the house phone and speak to the parent to talk to the kids. I mean, I miss those days.
Communication is super important because if you have stuff going on, no one can help you unless you communicate it with them. And then you can never solve any problems without communicating. So you can't expect anything to get better if you don't do your best to get your point across.
Communication was a lot easier when all you had was television. And before that, when you had no television, and you actually had to talk with each other and listen. I think listening is the element that's missing more than speaking and communicating, and the ability to empathize and feel what somebody is really saying. And no empathy comes across a text.
I think there's a lot of room for improvement. I think being present is very important, and a lot of times we get caught up with our phones and other things, and we're not being present with the person that we're communicating with. And so just remember to really be present.
When you're doing things over social media, you don't see a person's face. You don't see how they feel about things. You don't see their emotions. So it's much easier to do cyberbullying. So it definitely increases bullying.
We need to start communicating face to face. Like I said, I deal with students every single day, and they are not able to make eye contact because they are so used to being on the phone in front of their social media. That's really where you see the most bullying, because they're not afraid to say mean things. They're not afraid to see the emotion that's coming from somebody when they're behind their phone. We need to start coming together and saying, you know what, let's put the phones down, let's put the computers down, and let's try to figure out where everyone is coming from. I think that would really change a lot, but we don't live in that kind of world, so we have to find a happy medium between that.
Video games, there needs to be more of a balance because kids are on their technology too much, and there needs to be more of a balance between it. And also they need to be more active in the world and society instead of just being on like the games and stuff like that.
Social media has a big effect on how kids communicate with each other. I prefer that you talk to someone, pick up a phone, talk to them in person, and now it's texting and all the different Instagram and Snapchat, and I think that can cause problems.
We eat dinner together with no electronics at the table. And I start by asking them, actually, have they heard, I listen to NPR, National Public Radio, so whatever news is happening at that moment, I start by asking them, is anyone in their class or school talking about a certain incident or occurrence? And if not, then I tell them about it.
Without communication, you're pretty much just kept to yourself and no one gets to hear what you're thinking and what's going on in your mind. And you want to communicate that so other people can help you and you can spread awareness with that communication and you can go a long way with communicating rather than keeping it to yourself.
When somebody sees something online, it's so easy. They're not looking at somebody's face. They can just say whatever it is that pops into their head at the moment, and they don't have to think about it. They don't have to think, what is this going to do to this person?
On our phones, if you're mad or anything, you can make a post, you post it, you throw it away, and that's it. You know, you're mad and you do it out of spite, or it could be the same when you're happy. You know, you could go do something that you probably shouldn't be doing. You post anything on your phone, do everything, and then you don't really think about the repercussions of it. So I think really back in the day or earlier generations, when they had something, they faced it head on. They faced it, they talked about it, they did what it was, and then they got over it. But with our generation, I feel like we can use social media and our phones as a temporary scapegoat, you could say, just to get out of it. But we don't really think about the repercussions. It's not until we're like out of that state where the repercussions hit us, and they hit us typically harder because, I mean, technology has ruined a lot of people's lives. So I think once those repercussions hit us harder because we didn't face it head on, or we didn't talk it to like someone else, because there's no so many times your keyboard can't talk back to you, you know, talking to your mom or talking to your dad or even talking to your dog, like they can talk back to you, but texting on your phone and everything, they can't really talk back to you. So you're not really getting any feedback. So really all you're going off of is just raw emotions, and sometimes that's not the best.
When they're trying to talk to me while looking at their phones, just basic, looking someone in the face, they don't see anything wrong with that. And I had to understand that because they're communicating with the machine a lot of the time, so the machine really doesn't care if you're looking at it or not. So I understand that it's not personal, but I do see that they have a lack of understanding that language or speaking with someone is much more than just using your words.
Communication, to me, is the way that we interact with each other and how we get our words out with kindness and respect. And I feel like these days, because of social media and because of our phones and are constantly in our hands, even mine, that we might need to force ourselves to put them down and to look at each other in the eye and to smile and to actually have a conversation face to face. And I think that we also need to be teaching our kids to do that as well.